Stream of thoughts. June 11th, Sunday. My mother was my first bully, and I admired her for that. My mother was my first bully, and she taught me how to protect myself. I learned how to protect myself from the person who bullied me. Um, my mother was my first bully, and she showed me that anger and violence is a way to get things, that aggressive tones and facial expressions and actions is an option. My mother was my first bully, and when I got in trouble at school for beating people up, getting into altercations, and she told me that if she catches me getting in trouble again for fighting, that she's gonna be the one that I have to fight. And the thought of that confused me as a child, not because my mother hadn't shown violence against me, but because the act of showing violence against my mother as protection seemed counterproductive. My mother was my first bully. My dad died when I was a month old. So if I were to fight my mother and severely injure her, or, God forbid, something happened with her life, what would happen to my home, my stability? How would I be able to go to school and see my friends? How would I eat? How would I survive? My mother was my first bully, and she pushed me into suppressing my bulliness, my protectedness, into an internal protection instead of an external protection. And I had to learn to de-escalate situations at a young age in order to not rile aggression. My mother was my first bully, and I picked up that bully behavior from her. And in order to survive in the urban environment as a young person, when people are constantly poking at you with their words or their fingers, and it is not you who incited the bullying, it was you who was finishing the bullying most of the times. It still was up to you. It was still up to me to de-escalate the bullying, divert the bullying, redirect the bullying that was coming to me, because I could not be the bully, or I would have to confront the bully. And what would happen to my stability if I confronted my first bully? My mother was my first bully, and I admired her, and I respected her, and she was my hero. My mother was my first bully. She taught me the importance of patience and communication, and crying alone in my room to process my feelings and see how people were hurt, and that's why they were mean. My mother was my first bully. She taught me to see people and their actions and detach from them and not show hostility towards them as they showed hostility towards me and find other ways to protect myself with pseudo kindness, with over people pleasing consideration, with being the overly good girl, the kind girl, the funny girl. You like me so much you wouldn't want to actually bully me, girl. My mother was my first bully, and she groomed me into being a people pleaser, into being a reserved individual, into being sneaky. My mother was my first bully. My mother was my first bully, and I realized that I did not need to imitate her behavior once I became an adult, and I realized that being her little, being her twin, being spit out of her vagina did not mean that I had to be exactly like her. My mother learned to be a bully, to protect herself as the youngest girl of a clan of individuals in a oppressed society. My mother learned to be a bully, and she taught that to me. To protect me. And I admire her. I admire her for doing her best, for keeping me alive, for encouraging me to be better, to be smart, for showing me that kindness and patience do actually move things just as much as being forceful or aggressive. And I admire her for consistently putting me in the presence of God as a young person, and putting me into an environment that I could learn about God and build my relationship even when I didn't realize that I was building it. And I release her. I release her. I release her from being my hero, from being my teacher. I release her from protecting me. I release her from keeping me alive. I release her from all of the pressures that I felt put onto me. I release her from teaching me, modeling behaviors that I felt I needed to pick up to protect myself. I release her from any perception that I had of what she was trying to teach me and what I picked up as a young human being, because I needed to protect myself. And I thank her, and I'm grateful for her. And I send her love, and I wish her peace, and I wish her love. And I pray that her relationship with God blooms and blossoms, and that she feels loved and seen and heard and protected by God, so that, like me, she can lay down that bullying behavior, because love really is the winner. Love really is the answer. Love really does conquer all. And love really is easy to give when you have it for yourself, and that there is work available to increase that self-love. so that you can stop bullying yourself and then pouring out that bullying onto other people. Yeah. Thank you for listening to my stream of thoughts.